Hello all Java developers, it's me, your friendly neighborhood Java man, bringing you another tip of the day. In this session, I am going to explain how to connect to a data source using Jboss application server 7. I will be using MySQL as the data source, and I have Jboss 7.1, which is what I am using right now as my application server. I have seen many people asking about how to do this connectivity properly in the net, and I also see some problems doing this as well. I also had some problems. So here goes. First of all, I assume that you would have downloaded Jboss 7.1 or Jboss 7 into your machine and configured it. In this session I will not try to go into how to configure it. I will do another session on that. And you would have MySQL database installed as well. My MySQL version is 5.5. My Jboss version is 7.1.1. So first things first. First, what you will need to have is the MySQL Java connector. You can go to dev.mysql.com/download/connector.j and download your particular platform's connector. Now I am using Ubuntu, so I am using platform independent, and I am using the zip file. So once I download the zip file, this is what I will get. I will get this MySQL connector Java 5.1 3.0 zip. If you explode this, you will get this following folder. What we actually need is this Java file. Once we have this Java file, now we need to create a Jboss module. So in your Jboss installation folder, go to modules.com. There you will need to create a new module. So kdir MySQL. Let's create a new module called MySQL. Let's go into that, and inside that make another directory called main. Let's go inside that. So now we are here. Now let's copy this jar file from this location into the current working folder. So here I have my MySQL connector jar in my modules com.mysql main directory inside Jboss. Now the next important thing is to create a modules XML. The module XML is what tells Jboss to identify the driver and connect it from Jboss to whatever module that we want to connect to. I've already created a module XML, so I'll just copy it here and I will explain how it works. Okay, there. So now I have my module XML. So let's just see what is inside module.xml. So you have the standard XML, then you have module and the module version and the name that we have given, which is com.mysql, and then the resource. Resource is actually where the place where we give what our connector jar is. Then any dependencies which will be referring to this module. So I'm using javax.api, so I am putting the dependencies as javax.api. Now once you do this, you will need to go into standalone XML, which is inside Jboss standalone if you are running a standalone. So I will go into oops, we'll go into configurations, then I will open up standalone XML. Right, just go to where you have the data sources. Right, so I have my data source here. This is the example data source that comes with Jboss. Just underneath that you will see a set of drivers. Right, so this is the example driver. You will need to place in the new driver that we have created inside the standalone.xml. I have already put it in here. So inside drivers I will put driver name equals MySQL, module com.mysql, which is what we have put previously, and the driver class. Now this driver class is very important if you are using connector J 5.1.3. Previous versions of connector J did not require that driver, but now with this particular version onwards you will need the driver, otherwise you will get an error called duplicate driver found in Jboss when you are booting up Jboss. So once you put this in your standalone XML, that's it. Now there are two ways to configure the data source. One is editing the configuration standalone XML, other one is going to the web console and running through the web console. I prefer the web console because it creates everything accordingly the way that we want. So first of all, let's start Jboss. Standalone. Let's go in here, localhost port 8080, administration console. So I will need to log in, then go to data sources. Now you can see I already have my data source created, but you will not if you add this level. So first of all, let's go in here and you say add and give the data source name, say MySQL ds1, then you say the JNDI name that is associated with this one, say java:/MySQL. Next, select the driver, which is the driver that you have given when you created the standalone XML entry for driver. Next, and then give these settings. The connection URL will be the connection URL that you have to give when connecting to the database. Username is your username, password is your password, forget about the security domain. So what we would do is let's go in here, let's go to my Jboss installation folder, configurations, open only. Let's copy what I have already created in here. So this is my connection URL. uh, this learning here is my database. You can put whatever database you want, and you can put whatever IP that you want where you're running MySQL. So I would copy this, put it in here. I will give a username, so in this one I am using Indica, password 123456, which is a very secure password, and then hit done. When you hit done, you will get this entry coming. Initially it will be disabled, but you can enable it. So then it will be like this, you can enable it. Once you enable, you will see an entry in your standalone XML which will look like this. Data source JTA false JNDI name and pool name blah blah blah, it's enabled, and then the information that you are put in. Right, now to see how this works. Now we know the connection is there, but we need to now test the connection. So what I have done is I have created a sample servlet, which is a very simple servlet which runs as test JNDI. It uses JNDI and connect as a data source JNDI lookup to the data source that I have created, java:/mysql. It connects to the learning database which I have configured, and is going to create a connection, get a statement, and then run this query in my student database, and then get the student ID and the student name. If the connection was unsuccessful, this will throw an exception, and it should print the exception. If data is there, it will print data. If data is not there, it will print no data. So let's see how this works. So the first thing is to stop my Jboss from here. Then I go in here, publish this in the server. It's published. Now let's run from Eclipse. Okay, so my services are deployed. My MySQL data source is bound, just like my example data source, which is good. All is good. Now we go in here, we say localhost. So my service is running now. I will say test JNDI. So you can see data, and from the database I'm getting the ID and the name. So that means it's connecting and printing the data. If I disable this and I run the same example, you can see it gives an error, right? javax naming name not found. So it is connecting to the right data source. We'll enable it again. Go in here. Right, so it's working. Cool. So that's how you connect to Jboss 7.1 or Jboss 7 upwards to MySQL or any data source. Now if you are using a Jboss version that is lower than Jboss 6, the process is a bit different. So I will do another screencast on that. So in that session I will show you how to do this with Jboss 5 or 4. So I hope you have some fun with connecting to MySQL or any data source using Jboss 7, and I hope to do some more screencasts, more sessions, and more tips in the future.